So thank you for taking some time on this absolutely gorgeous, what is practically a summer evening, to come out, and you'll have a great opportunity tonight to dialogue with and meet some people who have had some amazing experiences that not only help them transition, as students themselves and in supporting students in this, this shift from high school into the post-secondary, but hopefully they'll be able to answer questions that you have. My name is Kate Knight, and I'm one of the university counselors here at SMU. And the reason that we've put this evening together, and this has been happening for a couple of years, I understand, I'm new to the school this year myself, is to be able to provide some information about what life is like beyond the bubble, beyond life at SMU, and hopefully answer some questions for you about what that process of transitioning to post-secondary looks like. For some of you, you'll be staying here in Victoria, living at home and going to UVic. So although geographically it might not look very different, certainly your experience is going to be very different when you head off to college or university. For some of you, you'll be moving very far away. Some of you might be moving as far as Europe or Australia to attend university. So geographically, it will certainly look a lot different than it does now. And there are lots of different things to get used to in the transition, not just what will life be like when you get to university or college, but also what will it be like to leave behind the experiences that you've had as a high school student. Some of you might have been here at SMU, you're a lifer. You've been here since kindergarten or grade 1. Others might have only joined us in the past couple of years. So we've got a great group of people here as part of our panel with different experiences from a parent perspective, a post-secondary counselor perspective, a high school perspective, a student perspective as to what that transition might be like. Just to give you an overview of the evening, we're going to have some time here, 25 or 30 minutes, to do some questions and answers. We have a wonderful facilitator here tonight in Johnny Morris, who I'll tell you a bit more about in a second. After we've had a chance to do some questions and some answers with our panel, we're going to move over to the strings room, where we've set up 6 different tables that each have a theme or a topic. And you'll have a chance to rotate through all the tables, about 7 or 8 minutes per table, to be able to not only get some information, but more importantly, ask some questions. And the people at those tables are there because they have some wisdom and experience to share. Probably most of them could sit at any of the tables that will be in there, but we've tried to make sure that you've got a variety of people that you can chat with. So without further ado, first I'll introduce our panel members. We have Chris Baumer, who's here from Camosun College, where he's a counselor. We have Rosalind Gates, who's an advisor and learning strategist at the University of Victoria. Janet Shepherd, who's a counselor at the University of Victoria. Virginia Ronning, who's the Director of Personal Counseling here at SMU. Dr. David Glenn, who is a parent of 4 SMU alumni, and 1 more is still here in grade 11, I believe. So he's very experienced. Catherine Humphreys, who's an alum from the year 2003, and Won-Jin Kim, who's an alum from 2010. Our facilitator for this evening is legendary, apparently. I heard lots about him before I even had the chance to meet him tonight. He's joining us from Vancouver, where he now makes his home, but I understand he used to be a resident of Victoria. So this is Johnny Morris. He's the Senior Director of Policy Research Planning at the Canadian Mental Health Association BC Division. He oversees a broad public policy agenda and a number of research programs designed to support policy, practice, and systems change. A key part of his current portfolio includes the Healthy Minds, Healthy Campuses initiative, which he stewarded from 2008 to 2012. He has extensive experience facilitating and is committed to creating collaborative processes that are inclusive and transformative. Johnny holds a BA and MA in Child and Youth Care from the University of Victoria, and he brings an applied research and practice background focused on youth suicide prevention, and he completed his applied training at Counselling Services at the University of Victoria, and he teaches in the undergrad UVic Child and Youth Care program. So I will turn it over to Johnny and let him work his magic.
Great. Well, it's so great to see all of you. Thanks for that introduction, a lovely introduction, and for introducing these wonderful panelists here. So what we're going to do in front of you for a few minutes, and we've done this for about 4 years. I was catching up with Mr. Humphreys earlier. We've done this for 4 years, and it's always gone really well. I'm going to interview this lovely panel who have such rich knowledge and expertise about transitions, each from a different vantage point. You've heard parents. Some of them have overlapping vantage points. Some of them are counselors and parents at the same time, and other perspectives. And we're just going to have a conversation conversation in front of you for about 30 minutes or so to hear about their perspectives. There's going to be a little bit of time at the end, a very short window before we meander into the strings room where you can ask a couple of questions or share your reflections. We've deliberately assembled this panel because they have different perspectives, and rather than talking at you for 30 minutes from those perspectives, we find that a conversational interview often takes the conversation in a unique direction. Does that sound okay with all of you? Okay. And we'll keep this lively because it's beautiful and sunny out there and it's a little chilly in here. So we'll animate and heat things up in here as well as we move along. So welcome, and I know some of you very well. Some of you I count as dear friends and colleagues, and some of you may become dear friends and colleagues after tonight. Who knows? After this panel. I always try and start with the most recent student perspective, and just to kind of start there. And I know it's Catherine. Yes. Catherine and Wanjin, am I saying your names correctly?
Yeah, that's good.
Wondering if I could start with you, Catherine, from your experience as a fairly recent alumna. As you sit up here tonight and you think about your own transition from here to university, what stands out as one of the highlight learnings that you experienced during that transition? What was one of the big takeaway learnings as you made that leap?
Well, living on my own was a big learning experience for sure. I made a gradual transition in that I did a year in residence at the university I went to for my bachelor's degree, which was Acadia University in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. And that was a very nice, slow transition for me. Wolfville's a small town. It's a university town. It's very accessible. I didn't feel the sort of lost feeling that many students feel when they go to a big city straight out of high school. But had I made the decision to go to a big city, I'm sure I would have been fine doing that as well. It's just different for everybody. But I would say that just the fact that I was living on my own, taking care of all of my own details, everything from, buying my own supplies, various things, my own toothpaste, and, being responsible for what I put in my mouth, everything that I ate, those types of things. Time management, not having anybody, reminding me, oh, don't forget your doctor's appointment, don't forget you've got this thing due, don't forget this, don't forget that, just being completely 100% responsible for everything, every aspect and element of my schedule and all of the responsibility that goes along with that. So that was a big learning curve for me, for sure.
And just to linger with you for a few more seconds, Catherine, because you gave such a rich answer, what do you think was particular about the skills and abilities that you have that helped you negotiate some of that steep learning curve you described?
I've always been a very independent person and very organized, so that definitely helped me, I think, and I sort of feel for some of my peers and colleagues who didn't have that sort of natural inclination to organize. I think about my brother, for instance, and he, some of you may know him, Johnny
Is he
Humphreys.
In the room tonight?
No, he's not. No, he's, but he was head boy here at SMUS in his year, which was 2009, and he was a great stand-up guy and everything, but a little spacey from time to time. And we have lots of the family stories about Johnny calling home and saying that he lost his wallet, or he lost his keys, or this or that, or there's just so many things that can go wrong when you're on your own for the first time. So my personal inclination to be organized and to follow through and to make lists, that's another thing I love to do. I get that from my dad. Johnny didn't inherit that trait. But yeah, those aspects of my own personality really helped me. And so I would just encourage anybody who doesn't already make lists to definitely consider giving that a try, and just to sort of think more in that direction.
Well, as a Johnny, I'm going to take on that advice tonight because I'm not a list keeper. I think it's something about
Johnny.
being a Johnny.
It must
Johnny
be.
come lately, Johnny, here comes Johnny. So that's very good advice. List keeping is very, very helpful. And it's gonna take a little while for the microphone to come back to you, Wanjin. But thank you so much, Catherine, for getting us underway in such a good way. And Wanjin, I'm wondering if I might ask you the same question. If you think about, maybe tell us a little bit about where you went and what was your standout learning during that transitional process.
Yeah, it's actually funny that Catherine mentioned Johnny because I got to go to school with him for quite a number of years. I don't know why the school would do this, but for some reason they chose me as head boy for the next subsequent year, so 09, 2010, and what they do with the head boys is they put you in the same room over at Provincials when you go off to Vancouver and you stay in the hotel. And 2 subsequent head boys, you should have seen our room. Oh my God. I didn't inherit that organizational skill either, so I know how that feels to have to tough it out. But I guess on a different note, what I would also discuss is, I think having grown up in Victoria and having gone to school at St. Michael's, where they do such a good job of taking care of you and showing you the way and providing you with resources. I went out to UBC Vancouver for my undergrad, which is a very, very large school, 40,000 undergraduate students, and the campus itself is massive. So for me, I did a bit of a huge leap where I went from being the big fish in a small pond to a tiny, tiny fish in a massive, massive pond. So getting used to that, I think, takes a little bit of time, at least it did for me. But what's important to notice, I think, is that SMUS is really nice because it does a really good job of providing you with just as many resources as university can. It's not that there aren't those resources there at university, it's just you have to do a little bit more grunt work to go look it out and go find it for yourself. So I guess the one thing that I had to learn for myself was, you know, they're all there. All the profs are there to talk to, all the clubs are there to join, all the help sessions are there for you to attend. You just have to sort of go and be proactive about it and sort of pave your own way. Yeah, so that was good for me to learn. It was a good thing I learned it pretty quick.
Pretty quickly.
It came in handy, yeah.
I'm going to come back to both Catherine and Wanjin in a few moments just to hear about, because I know last year there were lots of questions about what it's like to be in the classroom, and it's a different kind of learning environment with professors. But next I'm going to go to Virginia just for a few seconds here. And as the head of personal counseling here, I imagine a lot of people walk through your door and the doors of your colleagues with apprehensions, worries, anxieties, uncertainties about this next step. And I'm wondering, you know, what are some of the themes, without identifying people, but what are some of the themes that you hear in your room as a counselor here about people about to take the next step?
I think you mentioned the word uncertainty. I think that's a huge part of it is wondering what the future is going to hold, what university is going to be like. It is a big transition. It's change. And one of the things that I think we do as counselors, most of my team's here tonight, is that we will work on helping the students get in touch with the strengths they have so that they know they're going to they can go into that a little bit more confidently. And anxiety, dealing with anxiety, learning how to deal with it now while they're in high school so that they're well prepared. We all recognize that there are going to be anxious moments, and so to be able to spend time with them, giving them some concrete strategies to deal with the anxiety when it arises. And the other piece is resources, making sure they know what resources are available to them when they're in university, so that if they do crash or if something happens that some adversity pops up, which it no doubt will, and in some ways it's good if it does, that they will know they've got the inner resources to deal with it and the external resources to access.
That's great, great. And we'll come back to you with some more of those strategies, and I know you're in good company tonight with other counsellors too. I'm going to turn next to you, David. So it sounds like you've got some hard-won knowledge as a parent, having gone it through 3 times and about to go through it a 4th time. Am I correct with my math?
It's 4 times, about to go through it the 5th.
Oh, wow. So you've got even more hard-won knowledge than I anticipated. So you've probably done a lot of thinking over those 4 transitions, and I'm sure you could actually write a book now, probably, on what you've learned, maybe. Knowing that there's quite a few parents in the room tonight listening in on this, is there anything that has really served you well as a parent in negotiating some of the complexity of having your kids go off to higher learning?
I think there's a few things. First off, we certainly let our kids make their own choices on this. They chose their own universities. We've gone from Dalhousie to Queen's to UBC to UVic. So, I mean, we've had a fair gamut of different universities, and they all come with their own nuances. The kids have made their own choices, and I think for parents, we need to accept that this journey is going to be non-linear, and we have to accept that the kids might go this way a while and then come back to this way and that way. And from my perspective, that's okay. I think in the day that I trained, most people went off and they start a program, an undergraduate, and straight on into a professional school, and we went in one direction. what I've watched in my kids is it's nonlinear, and changes are okay. And I think we have to allow the kids to make those choices.
Is there anything that you brought to bear, David, in negotiating, arguably some of that margin of knowing that things could go backwards in circles? Is there anything that you did as a parent that enabled that and was helpful?
I think you recognize the anxiety, and you have to have them work through it. And I mean, I've had kids who have been challenged with that. So you go get help when it's needed, and you support them. Mm-hmm. And this isn't that's all you can do as a parent.
Yeah.
And you support them in their decisions, and you accept that 4-year degree is probably going to become a 5-year degree, and the 5 degree may follow up with a post-bac program before a master's program or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I think that's all you can do as a parent.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you so much for those insights. Chris, I'm going to come next to you. So you work as a counselor at Counselling and have supported many people. We're just catching up for 28 years now, a lot of support of students along the way. And is there any, as you sit there as someone who helps students as a counselor, is there anything that stands out to you as counsel that you provide to those students navigating those transitions too?
Well, I'm really resonating with many of the comments that have already been made, and I want to respond to all of them because it's touching me in different places as a parent, as a counselor, and that. But just in response to your question, I think that encouraging we still call them kids, if that's okay. I'll just use the word kids when they come to college. The young people that come to college to explore, to explore things, to make new friends, to plan, but to not be too harsh on themselves. So when they think they're going to do fine and suddenly it starts to vary and they're not doing so well in their courses coming up to finals and they haven't really prepared, you can put in that last ditch effort to try and put the structure in place to do the studying. And it's kind of like riffing off what you were saying, really. They have to develop some sort of self-patience to go through that, I think the anxiety often comes from within when they say, well, I thought I could do well and I was smart in high school, but I'm not really sure how I'm not getting this together very well. And, so it's about patience and self-acceptance. And we really try to empower them to, pull the resources from within, as you were saying, Virginia, and reach out for help and make connections with people that they might need, at that hour or week of challenge that they're having. And to not try and go through this alone and, get into self-blaming and being too hard on themselves, because that can be very punishing. Mm-hmm. So that's maybe not a skill strategy, but it's definitely what I find myself having conversations about.
Well, there's something so powerful in what you're saying about supporting people to give themselves permission, as Virginia was saying, to trip up and to make mistakes, and I'm turning to Janet next, knowing this is a big part of your work, Janet, figure things out on their own. So thanks for that, Chris. Janet, just wondering, and Chris gave me this idea, is there anything in what you've heard so far that you've particularly connected with as a counselor? Anything that's really stood out for you and you've resonated with? Lots.
Gosh. I think one of the things that I really resonate with the most is the I want to say the expectation that things will go wrong, and that's okay. I think I see so many students who come to university and have always been high achievers and have always been successful and never really experienced failure. And one of the things that I believe very strongly is that experiencing failure, as awful as it is in the moment, actually has the potential to help us learn a whole lot more about who we are and what we're good at and what we're really not very good at. And I think to go along with that, the piece that I think is most important is finding opportunities to reflect, to think about, what did that awful thing teach me? There must be something I can learn from this, right? Because it sure wasn't very nice. And I think that we live in a culture that doesn't create a lot of time for reflection. So when you talk about reaching out and asking for help, for me, that's one of the biggest things that students can do, is by going to see somebody like Chris or Virginia or me, you can have an opportunity to sort of step out of the stream of busyness and just sit and think about what was that? What did I just go through, and what did I learn from that?
So you've brought back many fond memories of me getting an F in first year university.
Thank you.
In first year algebra, you brought it all back.
And you feel great.
I feel
right?
I was on a path to marine biology and ended up in child and youth care. I mean, it's all worked out very well, and I'm still employed, and I failed math in first year university, so that's good. Yeah, see, it's all child and youth care workers. We're all alike. So thank you, Janet, for conjuring up that memory of seeing that fat F on my transcript 15 years ago. But thinking of my struggles as a math student, I'm sure many here are much better at math than I am. But over to you, Rosalind, as a learning strategist, and just shifting gears slightly, what advice do you have to offer around the ways that students need to adapt how they learn and how they study, going from a small, very supportive, very rich environment like SMU onto bigger schools or different kinds of learning environments? Is there any advice that you find yourself as a strategist, if I've got your position correct, giving out to the students you serve?
Yeah, I think I can't remember who said it, but there's this whole idea that there's all kinds of support on campuses. Actually, I think it was you. But you have to know where to look. And so all the structure is there. It's just that you kind of have to do the groundwork, yourself. From a strategist point of view, I've heard everything that everyone said, and I can't stress enough how important that transition year is. It's a different type of learning that's required at university. It's very self-directed. And if you are not born with those great organizational skills, it is something that has to be learned. And it's not necessarily taught in the K-12 system. And I think that it's an opportunity to take a look at my natural gifts and talents. How can I leverage those and use those to help me move forward? And where things are a little bit challenging, what can I use or learn in terms of strategies that can help support me to get me to that next level? And that's what we do. I wear two hats. One is as an academic coach and learning strategist. We have an LAP program at UVic. But also, too, I work at the Disability Services Office, and I'm an accommodation advisor. So for students who do have struggles and who have a designation, I would work with them to put in an accommodation plan as well. So it's kind of two hats, but basically all leading to the same student efficiency. Does that make sense?
And I think really I think the takeaway, before I go to you next, Wanjin, the takeaway of really being assertive as a student to seek out resources. You don't have to wait until the end of your fourth year to go seek out help.
Right.
You can really be assertive in seeking out those resources.
One of the things that I find, and we use the word hit the wall. A student will come to a certain point where their resources are just maxed out, and they kind of what we call hit the wall. They need some more rebar to help them be successful. And it doesn't have to be to that point. Come in first, find out what's available to you, and then that way you can design it the way you need it to be.
In the short time we have remaining, I'm going to just go back to Catherine and Wanjin. Wanjin first. We'll go with Wanjin. Sorry, awesome.
No worries.
I just want you to catch us up. If you cast your mind back to your UBC Vancouver, and just for the students who are listening in, because I remember I was an international student and I had no clue what my first year experience would be like, and I walked into an auditorium and there were 400 people, and I remember the professor telling me that half of us would be gone in 3 months because we'd all fail, and so I didn't have as reassuring first few months as an international student. But I'm just wondering if you could take us back to your experience. What was it like as a student to go from SMU and start to sit in those big lecture halls at UBC? Can you remember any of that?
Yeah, vaguely. It's all a blur. No, it was similar to, I think, what you experienced. I had at least 3 profs tell me the same thing. Half of you won't be here by December.
Jeepers.
The classes themselves are massive. It would be this times 20 probably, with 200 people in it instead of 20 like you see at the classrooms here at SMU. So it's definitely a really different experience. They have that saying, you're nothing but a student number at university. And I think for the first little bit, because you can't really expect anyone to learn 200 names over the course of 2 weeks, that's kind of true. What sort of sets you apart, I think, And what you'll learn as you sort of go through your undergrad and try taking all those massive 200 people courses is that there are, like, the profs are just as approachable there as the teachers here are. You just have to take the time out to maybe go catch them after they're done lecturing, right before they have to go to their next one. Just say, hi, my name's Wanjin. I'm super interested in your course. I'd love to swing by for office hours. It's just simple. It's as simple as that, but it's those small gestures that, so they seem really small at the time doing, but definitely down the line they have really, really large repercussions. So I guess that would be a bit of a tip, is to go seek out your profs and just get friendly with them, and that helped for sure, because it kind of helps you feel a bit closer,
A bit connected, more connected.
a bit more personal. Yeah.
I'm wondering if I could turn to you, Catherine, thinking outside of the academic setting, the classroom. I've heard lots of students over the years say that some of them arrive with ready-made communities, some of them go into residence where they build community, and some students have a really hard time building community. And I'm wondering, as someone who's gone through that piece, for the student who's perhaps experiencing, a bit of shyness or apprehension with really launching themselves into a community, do you have any advice or wise wisdom? Or wisdom, just wisdom?
Yeah.
Not wise wisdom.
I have lots of wisdom. One of the great things about universities is the club environment and the societies that you can become involved in. And most universities now have clubs for everything, like absolutely everything. And that's a really wonderful way to sort of get out there and meet new people and find people who are interested in the same types of things that you're interested in, especially when you're in lectures, of 300, 400 students and nobody really talks to each other because, you're all sort of a little nervous, and it's just weird, to be sitting beside somebody who you only see once a week or whatever. And so I would say really seek out those types of opportunities for yourself, clubs, societies, open mic nights, bucket night at the local bar, whatever, just find something that you can kind of engage in that's a regular gig for yourself, and hopefully you'll build a little community for yourself based on these little sort of groups of people that come together on a regular basis. And it's incredible, really, how people make friendships at universities. You'll hang out with some people who are in one class, and then some people who always are at the library at the same time as you, and then you'll meet friends through those groups, and then you'll work somewhere maybe part-time on campus or somewhere in the town, and you'll make friends through that group. So just, I would say, being open to social opportunities like that, and to make time as well for social opportunities, because that's half of the fun of university, if not more. That's kind of the whole point, really, as far as I'm concerned, is the social aspect. Yes, you want to get a degree and you want to study hard and everything, but it's kind of really more fun than anything else, and if you can let yourself go there and let yourself take advantage of that amazing, wonderful time in your life when how there are really, that's kind of it, for most people, is that university time. That's where you make your best friends and where you have the most fun. So I would say definitely make sure you make time for that and seek out those opportunities.
David, I'm going to come to you one last time here, and then just have a couple more questions before we wrap up. I think I'm not a parent. I know my parents always dreaded the phone call of, I'm coming home, I've had it. I almost did after I failed algebra. I almost called home. But as someone who's experienced this a few times, and I think you've given us lots of advice about giving lots of space for your kids to really figure out what they want to do. Do you have any other advice? And last year, a parent had some really great advice about what to do when you get that, I'm coming home, Mom, I'm coming home, Dad phone call on November 5th, which is typically a pretty tough time of the year. Have you had that experience? And you don't have to share it if you have, but.
We haven't had that experience, but I'd share and I'd echo a comment made is, I spent 10 years in university, and I think those were the most fun years, bar none. And I think we need to encourage our kids to go off to university. Sure, they're there to do degrees, learn, get ahead, whatever. But guys, this has got to be the most fun time in your life. And it should be. So, I think the kids need to do that. As far as, November 5th phone calls, no, we didn't experience that. But the kids have had, I think for the parents, think long and hard about small schools, big schools. You know, this is a very nurturing environment that the kids are in at SMU. UBC, a bit of a challenge. It's a big, big school. My son who went to UBC was on a national team, so he went and there was a ready-made team for him. Otherwise, I think UBC is a challenge. The smallest schools, look at them. Look long and hard at the smallest schools. But kids, have fun. The next bunch of years at university are years that you have to enjoy.
Thank you. That's great advice. That's great advice. I'm going to go to Janet next, and I'll go Janet, Chris, Virginia, and Rosalind just very quickly with some pithy nutshell advice. Janet, you've done a lot of work around career counseling and supporting students who think that they should have figured everything out by the time they get to you to figure out their career. Careers, I know, are a big part of the SMU experience, that long-term planning. What do you have to say on identity and figuring out? I know this is probably more than a nutshell.
How much time do we have?
But this importance piece around career development, you said lots of wise things over the years about career development. What would you say this evening?
What would I say this evening? I would say we live in different times, and career is something different. I think you said, David, when you went to school, you went to right through, you did your graduate degree, professional program, you went in a straight line. It is no longer a straight line for any of us. There is no such thing as job security, job stability. And so rather than think about planning as in, I'm going to be an X and I will do whatever it takes to get there, what I encourage people to think about is, who am I in the sense of what are my skills? What are the skills I enjoy using the most in what kind of environment? What kind of people do I like working with? In what kind of structures? And that's because if you know what your skills are, in employer terms we call them competencies, but competencies are knowledge, skills, and attributes. That's really, it's about who the person is. And if you use that as what I think of as an internal GPS, you don't have a straight line, you have a whole horizon. And there is no road anymore. It's more like you need an all-terrain vehicle. So preparing for a career requires a whole lot more resilience on the part of the individual and a much stronger sense of self, much earlier in the game. I think I didn't learn really about who I was until I was probably in my 30s. I'm embarrassed to say that out loud, but there you go. I think that the world of work today requires that people have a stronger sense of self much sooner. And ironically, because of the way education has gone, there's so much commodification of knowledge, it actually seems the case that people are having a harder time knowing who they are. I know I like this kind of music, or I know I want to drive that kind of car, but who am I? And so when you think about career, think about it in terms of what are my values? What are my skill sets? Where do I want to live? What kind of lifestyle do I want to live? And let that be the core. Let that be the GPS.
Chris, students often feel pretty apprehensive about seeking out resources. That's been advice that Wanjin and others have leveled during this conversation. Again, in a nutshell, what do you have to say to students who might be apprehensive about coming to hang out with someone like you?
Don't worry. I'm a nice guy. I'm very open and accepting. Those kinds of things. What I would really encourage people to do, what we say often to students when we go to do orientations at Comoska College is, we try and demystify the counseling experience, and that's myth as with a Y, myth, because a lot of people have myths about counseling, including things like, well, you have to be in real crisis in order to deserve to go to a counselor. And the flip side of that is somebody else has a problem more deserving than I do, and they should get in there first, and so I'll be taking up somebody else's time. There's all sorts of different myths. Or you have to follow a certain type of therapeutic bent, or if I go there, I'll have to bare my soul, and I'll be rushed, and I'll feel like I'm in a corner and run away. And really, that's not what it is like at all. It's certainly not like that in my office anyway. Well, actually one person did run away, but that was because of a different reason. You know, so the myths of I have to have a problem and that counseling is always problem-centered. It really doesn't have to be, and really it's much more life and passion and focus for living centered. And it's an opportunity to go and talk with people who are trained to fill in our blind spot, to really to act as a sounding board in a way that helps reflect your own ideas and wishes and interests and things that you're passionate about and want to do in your life. And everybody can benefit from that. I wish I had it when I was in university. And by the way, I flunked math in first year as well. And so my second name is Johnny. We could start the Johnny Club. It never occurred to me. I didn't feel deserving to go to a counselor because, after all, I stopped going to class. And so therefore, you know, it was my own fault. And, you know, and I think so many students are sitting in a place often where they think, well, it is my own fault, or there's nothing anybody can do about it, or what's the point in complaining, or whatever. And we would sort of go back to our fallback position or belief or family value, whatever that might be, or there's shame involved, or if I have to ask for help, I'm admitting something that I'll be embarrassed about. Those are the kind of myths that we wish we could just dispel and get rid of. And so students would come to see us just like they would go to the library, just like they'd go to an academic advisor or a learning strategist, because I need something and you're the place to go to get it. And maybe it's just a listening ear. So I'm not sure if I've answered.
No, you've answered it perfectly,
question.
and it's a beautiful segue for my penultimate question for Rosalind here. Next door, folks will have an opportunity to sit and learn about some of the early signs that someone might need to go and get help. But I'm wondering about, from a learning perspective, and as someone who does lots of accommodations for students who may have difficulty with learning or actually have a learning disability or challenge, what are some of the early signs, like, you know, going into the new environment where there may be some clues for that student that, you know, before the wall hits, you know, and Chris cited skipping out, you know, stopping to go to class, because sometimes that's the easiest thing to do, like not, you know, you feel under pressure to be in that environment. Are there any other early warnings that students can be cognizant of so that the wall doesn't smack them in the face?
This is going to sound kind of funny because it ties into about having fun. If all you're doing is spending your time studying all the time, and I hear that a lot, something's amiss here. University is hard, okay? Yeah, I've said it. It's not, you know, it's not easy. If it was, everybody would be there. But the aspect of that balance is really important. And the other thing is courage. If it's not, it takes courage to ask for help. And if a professor suggests to you that, you know, there's other resources here, like have you ever checked out the RCSD, or have you ever checked out counseling services? You know, there's lots of people that are aware and can watch and are watching. Just because you're sitting in a classroom of 100, 150 people doesn't mean that you're not being noticed. It means that it's a little bit more challenging, but if you are struggling and someone recognizes that, to take that advice and to go. I have a little equation that I use in my head, and I coach with it, and it's E plus R equals O. So an event may happen. You may fail your math test, okay?
Oh, the whole course.
Or the whole course. And we automatically, as human beings, we have a reaction to that. You might have called and said, I'm leaving university, or whatever. But we don't stop enough to say, what is the outcome I want to create? So we're like an arrow. We go E, event happens, we have the reaction, and then we're stuck with some outcome that we've designed by default because of a reaction. Where instead of just stopping and using what Janet said about that insight, stopping for a second and think, wait, now, what can I do that can control this to create a different outcome for me? So in terms of learning and supports and warning signs, when you're not getting the outcomes that you want, that would be a red flag for me.
Thank you. And my last question before we transition to the strings room, I always like saying the strings room, for you, Virginia, thinking of students who perhaps have come back, you've supported them as a counselor here, and I'm sure you have students who come back through your door after a couple of years. I know you've told me that over the years. Is there anything that stands out in what they say to you, like specifically the question, something that they'd wish they'd known before they'd gone on, or anything hopeful that you hear come from them that you'd like to share?
The biggie is how protected it is here.
Yeah.
The comment I hear the most is that they wish they were more prepared for the large class sizes, the less personal connection with teachers. And so that's the one, and it's a tricky one because we also believe that giving these kids a great foundation is what's going to help them be able to deal with any adversity that they come across. But that's been the biggest one.
Bubble.
The bubble. Yeah,
SMUS
really
bubble.
being safe and nurtured and protected here. But it doesn't happen that often. I mean, I know it probably goes through the minds of these guys every now and then, but that they actually come back and report that is it's not. I don't have droves of kids coming back and saying,
I think the way that you frame it, just to reflect back what I hear you saying, SMUS does such a good job. Something that's very impressive about this as a school of really skilling people up and supporting. They have and that does connote a lot of resilience. And sometimes it's just, the pond. I really appreciate the pond. You're in a different pool for a little while. So thank you. A big round of applause for our panelists. And I think we'll go straight.